and then the spiritual. We wanted to be more specific, and we started talking about what does that mean, the physical redemption. We said that Vilna Gaon describes it as the main functions of what's called the Mashiach ben Yosef, the first aspect of the Mashiach, this first stage being the divine inspiration, the divine assistance to develop first the return of the Jews back to the land, kibbutz, in the gathering of the exiles, and the building of the land. And we started to talk about that. What does that mean, the building of the land? So we saw how there's a connection, the life connection of the Jewish people in the land of Israel. One without the other is not alive. We saw how the land of Israel is a fertile land. But when the Jews were not here, he said, you'll be exiled from the land, and the land will no longer give its fruit. It becomes desolate. That was the prophecy in Vayikra. God told us there's a connection of life. One without the other, not the land, the fruitful land, but will not show signs of life. A land shows signs of life when it shows its produce and fertility. So that's what we saw of the prophets and the rabbis that explained this phenomenon of when the Jews will be off the land will be desolate. And we saw pictures, we saw Mark Twain, and how he indeed said he was in the land, and he saw the desolation and fulfillment of this prophecy. We said also, the rabbi said it's the curse is actually a consolation in disguise. The fact that the land will not give its fruits when you're here, because the land remains faithful to you. You'll be exiled from the land, but it's not like your enemies will come and find pleasure off the land. The land will remain faithful and waiting for you. And we saw the pictures, we saw different places in Tel Aviv, what it was like 100 years ago, whatever, how literally desolate and waiting for the Jewish people to come back. Therefore, the converse of that curse, if you want to pass out these sheets, the opposite of that is, I think we mentioned at the beginning, of what is the sign of redemption. After the Gemara says not to give signs and not to give predictions and dates, because people will be disappointed, or if the date passes and you see nothing happened, they don't see what happened, they'll be thinking that's it, we're not going to be redeemed, we're doomed, we're finished. So therefore, don't give predictions, don't give expectations, don't raise the hopes. Other people don't understand the stages of redemption. Doesn't appear what they were expecting to appear. But nevertheless, right afterwards starts this Gemara that you have on the top of the sheet. The Gemara in Sanhedrin 98, which I told you that last chapter in Sanhedrin, and the Gemara talks about the future, a lot about the future, the redemption and the future world, etc. So that brings down this Gemara. I'll read it in English. You have on the left. Rabbi Abba said, after all that, saying not to predict the date, Rabbi Abba said there can be no more, in Hebrew, you have no greater revealed redemption than this. Maybe there's other redemptions, other stages, but a revealed redemption, what's the sign of the reveal when now you can see it? That, he brings down the verse from Yechezkel 36, shoot you mountains of Israel. The prophet says, God says to the mountains, mountains of Israel, shoot forth your branches and yield your fruit to my people of Israel, for they are about to come. Right before they're supposed to come back, the land will give its fruits again. Will start to reappear, that fertility, that fruitfulness. Not like after they come and then it starts to give, then it's too late. What do you eat meanwhile? So therefore the land will start giving its fruits. In other words, when you see the land giving its fruits, because it won't give its fruits to anyone else. So if it does give its fruits, that means Am Yisrael is now returning to be able to utilize and to live off those fruits. But that's why the prophet says, give your fruits and shoot forth your branches, because my people are about to come back. So again, we would have expected maybe a sign of redemption, more explicit sign of redemption when everyone's religious. There's the temple, there's come down from heaven, everyone keeps Shabbat. So what is this agricultural success? That's the sign of redemption. But indeed, we mentioned that it's not just now that we have more to eat, and we have fruits and vegetables on our tables. But this is like the tip of the iceberg. This is the physical, we said, is the body, that is to house that future soul, that bigger soul. The first stage is to prepare the body, the receptacle, a super strong body, because why? That super neshama is coming back, the return to prophecy, the fulfillment of the divine ideal of uplifting all of mankind to be a kingdom of priests and holy nation. where justice, holiness, goodness is the driving force of all the functions of life, of the government and the army and the politics, the agriculture, all that to be a holy nation, holy in this world, not angels, but in this world, and all of that is driven by goodness, by tzedakah, how do you say tzedek, or justice and truth, the absolute eternal ideals. A nation that lives in this world, the above world, the spiritual world, the spiritual absolute good in practice in this world. And that's how does that start to return? First, it prepares its body. First, that super neshama, that super spiritual energy, entity, starts to puts down its footsteps at the Mashiach, right? Puts its first foot down. The foot is the fruits that start to develop and come back again. But that's just, don't look at just measure by how many fruits we have. That's an amazing thing itself. But that's the tip of the iceberg. That's a sign of what's coming back. This is the sign of Mashiach, of the Geulah, of the fixing of all of mankind, all of reality, that the lamb, the wolf and the lamb living together, and the knowledge of God will fill the earth, goodness and charity, and with all of mankind. That's the whole revolution of human culture and all of existence. And that starts with the revealed redemption. Like there's things taking place underneath the surface. There's things taking place and growing and developing. But that which, when it starts to blossom above the surface, when you have no greater revealed redemption than this, when the land gives its fruits. No, so what's the fruits? It's just more apples. No, those apples and those tamarim, we'll see the dates, are, again, the initial expression of something so great. When you see the body, when a baby is born, we say shechayanu to breathe. For what? 2 kilos of flesh, he can't even read, can't even write, can't even learn Gemara, can't even do the mitzvot. What are we so thankful for? Because you appreciate what is here already. Now this is the beginning of, this is the body that now houses that neshama that will be more and more revealed as the body enables its full expression. The more the body develops, the more that neshama can reveal itself. The neshama is complete from day one. That spiritual entity is absolute, it's already there. But day one, you only see a body, a physical, and it grows and develops in the different stages, as you know, development and infancy and childhood and adulthood, and then bar mitzvah. Then more and more the neshama can be revealed. So too, to appreciate the initial stages as just that, the initial stages of something so enormous, so great. And like we say, like the Gemara says in Masechet Tamid, Ezu chacham ro'et hanolad. Who is the wise? He that sees the nolad. He that sees what is coming, what is developing. Not just the moment. He judges by the moment. No, so we have fruits to eat. No, we have a baby, 2 kilos. What? That's what you're so happy. No, we see the nolad, what is coming out, what is developing here, what is pushing, what is behind the scenes that is growing and developing, and indeed reveals itself in stages. But don't judge by stage one alone, but to understand and appreciate what is developing. And our goal is to understand that and be able to guide and help the child, the nation, the world, to come to fulfillment, to more and more realize that full absolute goal that is pushing behind the scenes. The more you're aware of it, that itself facilitates the process of revealing, of exposing that bigger goal, which is why it's important to study this and understand this, to be those that appreciate not just the moment, and with all the difficulties and challenges and negatives and ups and downs. How do you know where we're going, and how can you be so optimistic? Because we know once that baby is here, once the land gives its fruits, that's the revealed sign of redemption. And you have no greater revealed redemption than this. This is the absolute sign of redemption, of that full process that we haven't even discussed a little bit, of what that future goal of what God has in store for creation. The purpose of creation is not just to live in peace and quiet as the world is today. It's such a different world. Like I said, a few of the examples I said of the land giving the lamb and the wolf. It's a different culture of love and connection, of unity, of all of existence, and all that connected to the source, the infinite source, elevating ad infinitum, of rising in more and more life, more super life, more than what we have today. And the senses, it's the total different existence. And that begins with the land giving its fruits. The land was desolate. We saw pictures and how empty and dry and abandoned. And all of a sudden, it's giving its fruits again. Now that means the neshama is now returning to the world. This super, what I call the divine ideal, the name of God, is now coming to the world. And with difficulties and challenges as it grows, there's the baby, how do you say, the difficulty of raising a child. It's not a simple jump all of a sudden. In other words, raising the child, raising mankind to this ultimate goal, till this neshama comes to its full realization. It's a process. It's also a long process of development of mankind, changing his ideals, and how do you change and how you make man better. It's not just some apocalyptic thing. The world will be destroyed, or all of a sudden there'll be an eye-opening I don't know, there will be miracles. It doesn't exclude that there could be miracles in the process, but it's not like all of a sudden the world as it is, with all the evil people with their selfish and desires and corruption and hate and then jealousy, and all of a sudden the Mashiach will come. This future will be picked to this up to this paradise, a different world, an external world. But this world becomes man himself becomes a different man. He's the same man, but he not with the same ideas, the same culture, the same motivations and drive and aspirations. He becomes what he's supposed to be, a human being, a Tzelem Elokim, the image of God. He becomes one of goodness, of love and kindness and connection to all and the giving to all. And that takes place, again, through stages, sometimes difficult, but it forces man to become better, forces him to realize, wake him up of what he is, what's the purpose of man, what are we here for? Just for more, collecting more money and more bank accounts and competing with everyone else to get rid of it. And then you start, but that's a whole process of God educate. There's a whole seminar, how God, how do you call it, a training ground, that God, history is this divine plan of changing mankind. And the main center of that agitating force, what is it, that activating force of change of mankind, is the Jewish people back in the land of Israel become that spiritual, how do you say, Migdal Or, this lighthouse, a place of illumination. From Zion will go out Torah, the word of God from Yerushalayim. There'll be this living example of holiness in the world, not less successful, less some monks and living away from the world and not being in this world. People want to be in the world, but how to be holy in this world and with this world. That's what Am Yisrael is about to show. And how does that, all that beautiful and much more, how does that begin? The first stage of that is this, we said the physical stage, but here we see specifically the land giving its fruits, a very mundane thing. The Rashi on the left, you have it at the bottom. What does it mean? And you have no kates megulam bezed. When the land of Israel gives its fruit, or we did it in English, ba'ayin yafa az yikrava kates. Then the end is near. The end, meaning the final redemption. That's the end of the world, but the end of what it was up till now, the exile, approaching the bigger goal. Ein lacha kates megulam yoter, and you have no bigger sign than that. Also, the Gemara in Megillah on the right, you have. Here the Megillah, page 17b, talks about the order of the prayers of the Shemona Esrei, the Amidah prayer. It's not just 18 or the 19 blessings that we have, just scattered. There's a blessing here, a blessing about wisdom, about Yerushalayim. Each one, the Gemara says, is one following the other. It's a building up order. It's a whole, like I said, systematic development from one to the other. And what you have in English, what I brought the translation, what was the reason for mentioning the gathering of the exiles after the blessing of the years? First there's the blessing of Birkat HaShanim, right? The land should be fruitful. We pray for the land giving its fruits. And then after that is the blessing of the gathering the exiles. So again, the Rabbi said that they're interconnected. There's not one, again, one is after the other specifically. One builds upon the previous. So what's the connection between saying the ingathering exiles after the blessing of the years, the fruitfulness of the land? Because it is written, again, the verse from Yechezkel, shoot your mountains of Israel, shoot forth your branches and yield your fruit to my people, for they are about to come. In other words, the ingathering exiles follows the blessing of the land giving its fruits. Like we saw before, the land giving its fruits again, that's the first stage, that's what enables and prepares for the ingathering exiles. One is after the other. What I didn't translate, I didn't bring down the translation above that, the 4 words above that are underlined, that why is the blessing, it says the 7th blessing of the redemption, that they'll be redeemed in the Shvi'it, in the 7th year. And that's why the blessing of the redemption, Goel Yisrael, is the 7th blessing. But the rabbis say, the Gemara asks, that in the 6th year there'll be voices, and the 7th year there'll be wars. And then Motzei Shvit, right, the end of the Shemitah year, then Ben David, then the Mashiach Ben David comes. So you said the 7th year, here it says at the end of the 7th year comes the Mashiach. So the the 7th year is full of wars. So the rabbis say, we're underlined, Milchama nami itchalta regula. The wars are also the beginning of redemption. Unfortunately, as we've been experiencing, tragically, but how sometimes wars are also the beginning of redemption, have a function in that process. The Rav Kasher, who is an encyclopedic rabbi, it's hard to put out the Torah Shlima, the encyclopedia, so to speak, of all the oral law in every verse in the Torah. And if you've seen the set of Torah Shlema, on every verse, all the oral law, all the midrashim, and all the chaz, on every verse. He has other books. Another book he has about the redemption, and he writes there on this Gemara. He brings down the Gemara from Sanhedrin. The Sanhedrin says, Rashi says, that there'll be a war between the nations and Israel. And he points out, Rav Kasher, he died a few years ago, that there's been no wars. He says, since the destruction of the temple until our days, there's never been a war between the Jewish people and the nations. At this sign of the Jewish people, the war will be the sign of redemption. And the question of why war, that's a sign of redemption, but nevertheless, not the sign, the war is also part of the redemption, the beginning of the redemption. And we've never had that. For 2,000 years, he points out we never had that. And then he says how the Yom Ha'atzmaut, the War of Independence, was the first war after a cessation of 2,000 years. And that's what it says, B'yameinu, B'kabui. And on that, it's referring to what the rabbis say here, that the wars are also the beginning of redemption. That war of independence that we had, that was the first time we had a war. The returning, what the rabbis were talking about the future, that the sign of the first beginning of redemption will be wars. That, he says, the first time we had a war that fulfilled that was the fulfillment of that prediction of what the prophet, what the rabbis say here, was in the War of Independence. On the left, you have a letter by Rabbi Kaplan, Spectre, one of the giants of the poskim, the rabbi, the halachic authorities. Yeshiva University is named after, right? Yeshiva, the smicha program is REITs. Rabbi Kaplan Yeshiva is called after him. One of the giant poskim, and there was a rabbi that collected letters. He asked all these different rabbis, the giants of the generation, what they thought about Zionism. This letter is from 1891. What do you think about Zionism? It's practice. We see who's dominant in the movement. It's not exactly a holy religious movement. Or the leaders and the participants are not all religious and Torah observant people. The movement is not against Torah. The movement is to return the Jews back to the land of Israel. But it's coming through and with these people that are not Torah observant. What do you make of it? Should we participate? Should we rebel against it? Should we ignore it? So there's a book called Shivat Tzio. This is quoted from the letters of rabbis that responded. One of the letters here, I just brought down two, but one of them, the top here, is from Yitzchak Kochanan. Like I said, the Rabbi of Kovna. You've heard of him, you'll hear about him, Rabbi Yitzchak Kochanan, Spectre of Kovna. In, like I said, 1891. He says, Kfar yadua dati. It is already known my opinion. Words underlined, I'm reading to make it quicker. It is already known my opinion and my agreement. Ki gadol ma'od mitzvah yeshiva. How great and dear and important is the mitzvah of settling the land of Israel. As the Ramban on the Torah wrote, maybe we'll get to this source. The Ramban elaborates on this. How the rabbis say in the Sifri, that's on the verse v'yashavta ba, that you will settle in the land. The rabbis say that the mitzvah of Eretz Yisrael, of settling the land of Israel, and dwelling in the land of Israel, is keneged kol mitzvot, is equal to, is weighs, literally translated, weighs as much as all the mitzvot of the Torah. So that's what we understood what that means when it weighs. It's not like in place of. You can be in Eretz Yisrael, and God forbid you don't have to keep the mitzvot. I have Eretz Yisrael, it's equal to all the other mitzvot, like it's in place of. God forbid, it's not in place of. It's the importance is so great, it's so central. It's so central to keeping all the mitzvot. It's the central place where we'll see the rabbis talk very clearly how the mitzvot are the main import and the main obligation of the mitzvot is to be done in Eretz Yisrael. Outside the land, what does it say? Why do we do the mitzvot outside the land? What do the rabbis say there in the Sifri? So it shouldn't be new to you when you come back to Eretz Yisrael. You can look up it, you have it. Rashi brings it down in Dvarim, chapter 11, verse 18, where we say every day that you'll be kicked off the land, right? In the Kriyat Shema. You'll be kicked off the land, and you should keep putting on the tefillin and the mezuzot. So the rabbis say there, what's this juxtaposition? You're supposed to continue the mitzvot everywhere. No, he says that you'll be kicked off the land, and you should continue doing the mitzvot. So they shouldn't be new to you when you come back. It's like a rehearsal. From the Torah, it's an obligation. It's not like a voluntary rehearsal. I'll do it once a month. I'll remember how to put on tefillin. But the Torah obligates you. But why? The rabbis explain, so it shouldn't be new to you. We'll talk about this more in depth. But nevertheless, that's what Chazal tell us, that the main import, the Ramban emphasizes and other rabbis, how the main import, and we'll see the metaphysical influence of the mitzvot is when they're done in Eretz Yisrael. This is the place where they're the full energy that is released through the mitzvot in Eretz Yisrael. So it's not like it says, what the rabbis say here, that he's bringing down that the Eretz Yisrael is equal to all the mitzvot of the Torah. It's not, again, in place of, but this is where their full significance and meaning, and is the basis, the foundation for all the mitzvot. And then he says, I'll skip to where it's underlined, Ubaruch Hashem, if you see the last part of the 4 lines that are underlined, Ubaruch Hashem, Elokei Yisrael, Shechiyanu Vigyanu Lizeh. Thank God, and Shechiyanu, right? He makes a Shechiyanu. Thank God that we are privileged to see, what? 1891. Kini Torah, that we are privileged to come and be alive at this time when this movement that encompasses the whole nation is Mishtadel Binyan HaKadosh, is waking up to fulfill this holy matter of Yeshuv Eretz Yisrael, to develop the land, to settle the land. Eretz Avot Avotenu Akdosha Levinyan Chorbotea, to build, to come back to our holy fathers, the holy land, and to build its destroyed, its empty, desolate places. V'rov todot l'Hashem al ma shezachinu b'doreinu l'rot ze beinenu. Many thanks to God on that we were merited and privileged to see this in our generation, to see this with our eyes. What did he see then in 1891? We saw the pictures. It wasn't, like I said, when a baby's born, what do you see? Again, kilos of meat, can't read, can't write, can't do anything. But he sees already, giants of the vision of Torah is not to see what the moment. If you understand the process, you understand history, the ways of God, you learn Torah, that gives you the eyes to see and understand what is really taking place. What are trends? What are processes? Not just the moment. The problem is the senses pick up the moment, right? The camera picks up the moment, what you see. But there's processes that are taking place. And the vision that the Rabbi, 1891, when it was at the beginning of the Zionist movement, you could say whatever, but they were still debating Uganda, Argentina, whatever, and Israel. It was what was built in Israel. What would they say today? What would he say today if he went into the shuk, Machon Meir, the fruits, the vegetables, just the physical side, and the land, the Torah, the flourishing of the physical and the spiritual, the economy, everything. We'll see, hopefully you'll see, I'll show you some statistics of Shmuel Eliyahu, the son of Rabbi Eliyahu, put a book out called Hanevuah, prophecy, like the fulfillment of these different aspects of the prophecies that we're witnessing today. But what did he see in 1891? But it already says, thank God, Shechiyanu v'kiyumanu, we reached this day of seeing that the nation is waking up. Another great rabbi, one of the giant poskim, Rabbi Shua Mikotno, also emphasizes the fact that this movement, the Zionist movement, encompasses all types of Jews. That's a very special phenomenon. That's an indication of something very deep. If it's just the tzaddikim, the people that prayed every day for Yerushalayim, and now the opportunity comes and they come to Eretz Yisrael, obviously they believe in God, they believe in the redemption, they believe all that we're talking about, and they are aware of it, and they come to Israel. But here we're talking about a movement that encompasses Jews that have left Torah, that don't believe in all this, threw away the books. What is this waking up? Where is this coming from? The fact that it encompasses, he says, the not religious, the mediocre, and the holy, starts with even the not religiously observant Jews. That's a sign that the neshama is waking up, the inner dimension of the Jewish people. We didn't talk about this, but it's an important letter we should maybe learn sometime of Rav Kook. Letter, you get a takana, letter 555. The letters are numbered, right? Lettered, aleph, but in order of the. So letter number 555, which means takana, like the word to be fixed. Anyway, it came out that way, not by chance, apparently. An important letter, an amazing letter that Rav Kook delineates and explains the basic, not the composition, the makeup of the Jewish people. That there's two elements that make up the holiness of the Jewish people. There's the inner, divine, absolute, immutable aspect, the neshama, this divinely created essence, not by our choosing, not by our understanding, not by our believing. That's a fact of reality. You're a human being. Decide you want. That's a divine. That's a creation. That inner divine aspect. And the Jewish people have this special, this divine content to bring to this world. That's an act of creation that metal conducts. It's not the choice. It's a fact of reality. And then there's the free will level. What we do with that. Each one of us has free will. We can believe that, understand that, live up to that, go against that, live totally not religious, not holy, not righteous, not moral. God forbid. We can. So there's two aspects: the objective and the subjective, if you want, in different terms. What the Maral calls the holiness of the collective holiness, and individual, the internal side, which is immutable and absolute and constantly there, but the external, how much you reveal, how much you expose of that inner light, that inner energy. That's where you come in. That's where our obligation and our privilege to bring that to fulfillment as individuals and as a nation. But the holiness of the nation, as the Maral, again, we mentioned a few times, it's also important to learn inside. Chapter 11 in Netzach Yisrael, the Maral of Prague. Very central teaching there of, again, the same idea that the holiness of the Jewish people, the chosenness, I mentioned once how the difference between Avram and Noach. If you remember once I mentioned how by Noach it says he was holy and religious and then God came to him. By Avram there's no introduction. And the Maral says on purpose, Avram was holy and religious and spirit and moral. But the Torah doesn't mention to you because you should know, or that you shouldn't mistakenly think that the connection of God to the Jewish people is dependent on his holiness and worthiness, and then God comes to him. But the holiness of the Jewish people is a divine creation, is absolute, he says, it does not depend on sin whatsoever. Nothing can change that. It's not by our doing. We can't make it. We didn't make it. We can't break it. You can reveal it or expose it or not, but not if it's there or not. That energy is there. That holiness, that divine, that infusion into this world of this otherworldliness into this world, that's the creation of God. Now we have the job to fulfill that as individuals, but ultimately it will be, because it's not like our free will is totally in control, that if we never, God forbid, to choose to expose that holiness, we will remain, this holiness will remain unexposed. But since it's an inner absolute reality, it will come to fruition. The energy could not last for, like the Maral says at the beginning of Netzach Yisrael, that which is not natural cannot last. Like the ball in the air must come down. Right? The inner energy will come and be, like I said, push itself to full expression. If you refuse to go with it, so to speak, the pressure builds up and it comes out in maybe less comfortable ways, but it will not remain idle. It cannot remain subdued forever. There's a limit to free will. That the world will be redeemed, it will be saved, the world will not be nuked, and the world will be destroyed, and the sun will dissipate, and at the end of the creation. No, the world will get to that goal. God didn't create the world for nothing. He brings the world in a way that through your free will, through our choice. But the ultimate truth will be, because it is an innate, absolute implanting, so to speak, a divine implant in this world. All of history, all of reality emanates from that goal and comes to the unfolding and the revelation, the full actualization of that goal. Nothing can stop that. Nothing can prevent that. No forces of evil, no bombs, no free will of man even can totally. That's if you see the Dat Vunot. You have a few things. The Ramchal here, Path of the Just, the Knowing Heart. I don't see it here, but the Knowing Heart, they translated to English, of the Ramchal. It's a few books, right? He's known for the famous Mishlat Yesharim, the Path of the Just, also Derech Hashem, the Way of God, and the deeper, the Dat. He has a lot of books in Kabbalah, deeper. But Dat Funot is already on the border of the deeper inner workings of Torah, how God runs the world. And he talks about this idea, understanding of the absolute, the goal that is not dependent on totally on the free will of man. To a certain point, to a big point, we have free will. That's what we mentioned before when we talked about Yechezkel 36, that the final redemption will come with a man shemi, for my name's sake. The man shemi, he calls it that, what he calls the hanagata yuchud. There's the guiding of the world by reward and punishment. What you get, you get what you deserve. And there's another level of the oneness of God, this inner plan of goal of creation that is functioning within that and above that and supersedes that, whatever, how to bring about the ultimate goal, the oneness of God, with your free will. But there's at times when your free will cannot stop the ultimate revelation of that ultimate goal. And that's what we said in Yechezkel 36. Not for your sakes, not because you're deserving, not because you're worthy. So why not? If you're not worthy, then that's it. You're not going to be redeemed, like some religion says about the Jewish people. That's it. God left you. You weren't worthy. Now you're no longer the chosen people. Now we're all... But no, and he talks about after the Christian complaint there, claim, that there's nothing can change that. It's not a changing of... That's the reality. And indeed, there's a time when that reality breaks through in spite of your free will. It's the beginning of that one. I don't see it here, but...
That's not here.
It used to be the list. Here's a bunch of books of the Ramchal. But anyway, the knowing heart, dat funot. How did we get to that? How the fact that the nation at large, that all types of the Jewish people are waking up, that's the inner level. Rav Kook, I didn't tell you the coin, if I already brought you that letter of Rav Kook, he calls them the two distinct levels of the free will level and the inner dimension. He calls that the skula and the bechira. The skula is that inner, immutable, active nature, active creation, that divine aspect that's in the Jewish people, this collective life force. It's called the neshama, Knesset Yisrael, the Shekhinah. He calls that the skula. And then there's the bechira, the free will level. How much we choose and each of us to live and understand or believe or do and expose that inner content. The difference is that when you do choose to do so, you're not just exposing some human idea. I want to be good, I want to be nice, I want to go and give charity to someone. You're bringing to expression some human energy, positivity of goodness and kindness. When you do the mitzvot, you do good things, you open up and let something infinite come through. What's coming to expression is not some human finite contribution to the world, to making the world better. Literally, you're opening up and enabling that inner neshama, the inner skula, that inner divine, inner totality of infinite good to come to the world. And the whole book of Nefesh HaChaim discussed that you mentioned, the classic work of the Rav Chaim Volozhin, the student of the Vilna Gaon, has an important, like a classic work of Torah understanding and wisdom. How, simply put, the beginning, at least the first section especially, how God made this good that He wishes to bestow. So that everyone writes, the Ramchal also, that good, that the flow of the infinite to this world, He made it dependent and comes through the acts of men, of what Am Yisrael does. What we do, if you want to put it in gross metaphor, we like open the faucets and let the water come through. The water that comes through those faucets, when we do good things and do the mitzvot, it's not just what do we see the value. We're putting on tefillin, b'chlal, you don't see any value. The world is better because they put on tefillin. But you don't understand how that is like the tip of an iceberg. In other words, that's the faucet that enables that inner skula, the inner divine content to come to this world, that raises the world beyond the limitations and the borders of the world as we know it. It literally uplifts the world, energizes the world beyond what you see. That's what all the mitzvot do. The Torah, especially, what it does. Learning Torah that's a section. You have the fourth section about study of Torah, what that does. But in other words, what I want to say is that the two aspects we understood of this understanding of this distinction of the inner level and the external. If it all depends on the external, so what do I have to know about the inner level? You have to be good, you have to choose to do good. But no, you have to know that first of all, even if you don't, that still remains, that holy inner core remains no matter what, and ultimately will come to expression, as I said. On the other hand, when you do the mitzvot, when you do fulfill your inner nature, you're living up to your true self, first of all, you'll be happy and healthy in the world. It's totally different when it's not something external. You have to do the mitzvot. God gave you these books of weird rituals, archaic customs. We're in a modern world. We get to the Mars and the moon, whatever. What are you still putting on these strings and straps on your hand? Whatever. So that you should know that those mitzvot are not just what you see, like just turning a little faucet, but that enables this energy from within, this divine, literally this infinite energy. You're connected to these pipes above. That's why, how do you say pipe in Hebrew? Tzinor, which is the letters of Ratzon, like the will of God, Tzinor. The will of God, Ratzon, the Rabbi say, Tzinor, Ratzon, and the will of God comes through these pipes, through these vehicles, that you open up the faucet and enable that energy to come to the world. If you could measure it, have a Geiger counter from it. The world is a different place. Every time you put on tefillin, every letter of Torah that you learn, the energy level is growing and getting higher and higher until there's a release of maybe a letter, how do you say, of a certain point that you see now changes in the world. You see the land giving its fruits again. You see things on the revealed level. But nevertheless, if we could measure and understand that the world is not the same, every mitzvah, every accumulative holiness and goodness that is changing the world, changing the morality of the world, changing the man is getting better with all the evil and suffering. Now the UN, at least an attempt to get rid of wars, to, again, at least the world is man. It used to be glorified. War was the epitome of who the stronger guy, whatever. Now at least the world recognizes that's something not good. Let's try to get rid of it. Let's try to minimize. Not so successful because there's still a lot to go yet, and still till Am Yisrael shows the proper way how to do that. But nevertheless, the man is growing, and there's many points you could see how the world is advancing, physically definitely, in the medicine and every other fields, but also morally and spiritually. With, again, we still have what to go, but maybe we're at the climax of finally of the eradication of evil. Now there's this polarization of the good and the bad, and we'll see the victory of Israel is not just over the Hamas. It's literally this battle of finalizing and getting rid of forces of evil, of negativity of mankind, of corruption, of love of, not of life and the beautification of life, but how to destroy life, of killing, of butchery. These forces of darkness that are still in the world. So that's what our goal is to, what's going on today is the eradication of not just some movement, some terrorists, but literally the forces of evil. But again, it's my famous, I use it often, my metaphor of the child that goes into the war room, I don't know, the Pentagon or whatever, underground, and his father takes him in, he's the head of the Pentagon, lets him in there, and he says, oh, look, there's a button there that says, stay away, all these lights, and don't go near there, don't push this button or whatever. And the kid says, oh, that's Dafka, the most attractive button. He goes to push that button, and everyone's going wild. What did you do? And he said, what did I do? He moved the button to 1 centimeter, half a centimeter, whatever. But that button, right, is connected to a whole intercontinental ballistic missiles, and then blows up the world, whatever, half of the planet. But he just touched something very small. In other words, the mitzvot, Havdil, the positive side, you can think, again, it's a small faucet. It's a little tiny thing I'm doing, but that faucet is connected to tzinorot, to these pipes, to these metaphysical levels of reality. The Nefesh Chaim elaborates more about the upper worlds, how they come through and reveal through these meticulous, exact mitzvot. How they're done properly is in time, in the proper place, and etc. All the mitzvot, we learn the specifics of doing them properly. What's the difference? You had good intentions, I keep Shabbat, I did this, I moved something very small. What's the... but it's like the difference between pushing the button. In other words, it's an exact science. There's physics and there's metaphysics of how the world, how this energy, how this good can come to the world. And the opposite, how the sins have negative influence. And so, but that's when you understand this whole makeup of like the inner level, the hidden level, so to speak, from our physical eyes, and the external level of what's exposed in our free will and what we can do. And our whole free will is to line up. The whole Torah teaches you how to line up your free will, how to live your life according to the bigger the truth, the inner truth, the real reality of what makes the world better and brings the good to the world. And to live according to your nature. That's you. How to be the real you, the super you. It's not against you. It's not something, like I said before, how you have to do some archaic laws and rituals. This is how to be you, how to totally live. You're not aware of the child himself, not aware of what he does and how to live properly. So you give him the proper food. We know what, now more and more, what's healthy food. So too, also healthy food for the spirit, for the soul, which brings down the bigger energies. That's the main essence of man. The spiritual side, the moral side. So the Torah teaches you who you are, how to live your true self as individuals and as a nation and the world, to guide the world to be what it's supposed to be, what it's meant to be. But God amazingly left it, so to speak, part of it, in your hands. I want it to come through you. That's the beginning of the Ramchal, also in Derech Hashem, that you do have here, the way of God. And also, Dat Monori repeats at the beginning, how God wanted the bigger gift is that which comes through your free will. I could give you something, but like it says, the rabbis say how a person is embarrassed to eat the food, the bread. It's called Nahama de Kisufa, bread of embarrassment. A poor person, you can throw him a loaf of bread. He's embarrassed to look in the face of he that gives it to him. He didn't earn it, he didn't deserve it. It's not his. There's a certain embarrassment. God gave the good to be the highest way of good is not by giving it as a present, but by earning it. And then it's yours. It fits you. I worked for it. I deserved it. I made it. And that's how God made it. That says, I want to bring this and infuse, to bestow this absolute good for all. But I want it to come through you until you get it. That's even a bigger good than had I just given it to you with, again, no choice and no free will and no, to be robots. But that's another story. That's a deeper thing of why there's free will and why there's evil in the world, of temptations, of to not be able not to do it and to give you the opportunity to have free will. It means there's another choice to do something else. But all those are just to ultimately facilitate the bigger good that God wishes to bestow, which will be no matter what. But getting back to this, so what he says, when this rabbi sees how that it encompasses the nation, this is not an individual movement of people that believe or want or that chose. It's beyond the choice of the individual. When the nation is waking up, that's a sign that the neshama, that skula, that inner dimension, the collective holiness, that divine ideal implanted in the Jewish people is now waking up and demanding its expression. It's not just you and I. Remember, we want to be Zionists. We come to Israel. We want to fulfill for different reasons. Everyone has their reasons. Everyone explains why. They give emotional reasons, historical reasons. I'm coming back to the land. I'm running away from pogrom. Everyone has their. They give human beings. Don't just, they're not robots being pulled, some inner pull. The neshama is pulling me to the land of Israel. Everyone has their, they give rational, what they think, rational explanations. But the fact that the whole nation is waking up, all different types of Jews. Rabbi Shukotno and other rabbis that wrote that this is a sign of the neshama that was waking up, that which not only supersedes, that transcends individual free will. This is like the neshama is now coming back, like we said, that's the sign of redemption, that the neshama is now demanding its expression, the first stage of which is that it demands its physical, to build its physical receptacle, which is the Jews back in the land. So there's an awakening of the Jews all over the world. Not all of them wake up all of a sudden, all at once. We see, unfortunately, not everyone is here yet. But there's an awakening of those Jews that will come back and do come back and prepare that receptacle. And that's what he says. I bless God and thank God that we see that this nation, this movement, B'chol Amenu, encompasses the whole nation to come back and to attempt to serve. It wasn't everyone. Not all the Jews were Zionists and coming back to Israel. But he says the fact that it encompasses all types of Jews, not quantity, in other words, 100% of the Jews, but the vision of seeing how the Torah eyes that see the historical movements that are not by chance, that are divinely inspired. He sees the neshama waking up. And he says, thank God, and I bless God, and all the thanks, multiple thanks to God that we've merited and privileged in our generation to see this with our eyes.
They're not able to see this, like whenever they read the pasuk that we read in the Tanakh, like what are they doing there? Like it says that whenever a Jewish people is outside the land of Israel, they are considered as doing Kilul Hashem.
Right.
So what about the big rabbis that living like?
So that's the classic question. Why, up till now, didn't the Jews wake up and come back to Israel? We had all the sources, all the rabbis, all the things of discussing the tragedy of exile and the beauty of Eretz Yisrael, the significance, the obligation to be in Eretz Yisrael. So that we always get back to what is this phenomenon also to understand? How can we be 2,000 years in exile and not only individuals but rabbis and scholars? That's the classic, the paradigm, the mold of the sin of the spies. But that we'll talk about in more detail, that this is a repeating phenomenon. There's a book, I think in the office you have here, you can ask Rabbi Listman, Rise from Dust. And he shows how all through Jewish history, this has been the weak point. Rabbis, scholars, that every mitzvah, the Yehuda mitzvot, Shabbat, Kashrut, meticulous. Eretz Yisrael, this has always been. It's nothing new. I don't want to, not the time to start, we have to close. But you should, in the book there, it goes through all the Torah sources from Avram Avinu. Not just the spies weren't the first. We mentioned last week. Remember? Maybe not in this class. So I can't start now. In the end of Vayigash, the last verse was that they held on to the land. And the rabbi, the Kliyakar, this was the sin of the Jews coming to claim against them, to accuse them, that they requested to be settlers in the land that was meant to be strangers. They got used to it in Egypt. They didn't want to leave until they had to be taken out by force, and only 80%, 20% left. Right? The rest were killed because they didn't want to leave. It's not a new phenomenon. But that maybe we'll get to next time. I'm going to continue the sources later about the land and the fruits and more of the statistics of today. It's amazing things what are going on, to indications and to so understand what is this first stage of what does it mean, the tip of the iceberg, how amazing the tip is, but to understand and appreciate from that what energy, what neshama is coming back, prophecy, the levels of our future. Man becomes totally fullness of life, of energy, vitality that we're not used to today. But B'ezrat Hashem, we'll continue next time.